Welcome to the Healing with Film Catharsis Insight Transformation Workshop. My name is Eli Matilda Ridley, and we have a bunch of amazing panelists here going to share incredible stories and share about their films and their own experiences of healing with film. Just to kind of get started, the reason why I wanted to put together this workshop is I've always had a very strong connection to film. Film has always been a source of like medicine, a source of healing for me. And it really started when I was a toddler. When I was a toddler, I had bronchitis and I had to go to the hospital very young age, and it was very, very terrifying. I was in a sterile, like small room, very, very scary. And my parents brought in a VHS of The Lion King. And I remember just being able to watch The Lion King and just being able to get lost in it. I was able to escape from the intense fear and loneliness and pain that I kind of was going through at such a young age. And just being able to get lost in that movie was super, super healing. And then fast forward to when I'm a teenager, I would turn to films like 13 and Good Will Hunting as a place to be able to experience catharsis, because usually I couldn't cry outside of films. It was usually with films and within watching movies that I was able to actually access my emotions, connect deeply to my authentic, like emotional self, and cry and feel angry and feel all of these feelings that I was kind of repressing outside. And then in college, I turned to film more as a process of therapy, more as a process of trying to work through things. And that's something I'm going to be curious to ask about you guys for panelists, is just kind of using film as a way of working through something. At the time, I kind of had just like awakened a past childhood trauma that I had repressed for a very long time, that had awakened recently in college. And I turned to film, specifically this film process, to try to work out what was going on. I had a lot of like rage, a lot of anger, a lot of feelings of hatred towards my abuser. And I kind of turned towards this film to kind of look towards revenge and look towards moments of anger, just like letting that like visceral anger just to come flooding out. And the universe didn't want that film to be seen by other people. The universe decided that this was not this was therapy, and this wasn't something to be seen by others, because there is a delicate balance between films that are therapeutically for us and then films that will have a healing impact on the audience and aren't just for us. And so I ended up losing all of the content of that film. We like tried many times to try to regain it, and we tried to go to all the different tech places to try to see if we get the footage back, but we completely lost everything. And in that meantime, I kind of started going to therapy, and there are a lot of changes in my life kind of led to more post-traumatic growth. And so the movie we ended up making was way more therapeutic, and is a film that I believe is kind of more therapeutic for audiences as well, was extremely therapeutic for myself. And then kind of recently I made a film, Manifesting Madeleine, and that again was working through something. It was more for entertainment purposes and more for like kind of the audience and for storytelling purposes. But again, the initial kind of coming to the story was coming to work through something, coming to work through my own feelings around my gender fluidity, and having a lot of fear around going into the non-binary or like other like bathrooms, having a lot of fear around like what will people like think of me if I walk in here. Am I going to be fearful towards people? Are people going to be scared? Am I going to be accepted? There was a lot of kind of fear going through, and during this whole time I was realizing that my past trauma too was very intimately tied to a lot of the repression of my gender fluidity. And so I turned to Manifesting Madeleine to kind of work through those things, to make sense of those things. And so film has always been a place for catharsis for me, and also a place to kind of work through. And in working through, being able to maybe find insights, maybe gain wisdom, maybe create some sort of action plan of how to move forward. And my hope is that those films also are able to be healing for other people. And that kind of brings me towards all the panelists. So everyone here, your films that you created have a healing impact on other people. And I'm curious, and when I talk to each of you, to kind of explore what that working through might have been too, because maybe there was a little bit of that as well. And so to begin, we're going to have one of my good friends from Winnipeg, Bevan Klassen, who
Hi.
is working right now as a film therapist. And Bevan, I'm so grateful to have you a part of this panel. And I'm curious, like just to start off, what are some of the essentials that we should know about film therapy and about film therapy theory?
Wow. That's a big question, and I like it a lot because that's it inspires me so much, and is why I became an art therapist. I graduated this past fall and did a lot of research. I did my thesis on filmmaking as therapy, as a creative therapy modality, and I'll share that in the chat window as well. But a few things come to mind. One is our relationship, Eli, Matilda, and how we met, actually. It was at a drama therapy workshop, and it was so powerful. And what I found the most powerful, a couple of things, was just the idea of play and the idea of letting go, the idea of I know for myself, I can get so much in my head, and this is really what I continue to work through, is just these ego thoughts that really bind me, are blockage to my creativity and my potential. And so to find a spacious place to play, and a film set, if a film set can be that. I know for myself, with the clients that I've worked with, I'm actually off to an Indigenous community center to work after this. And we play, we bring out the video editing software. We use WeVideo, and I have a camera and a mic, and we create scenes. And it's really about that playing, because that's how we learn to express ourselves. And each expression is so important and needs to be affirmed. And so, play is, and a safe environment too, right? A place where you can feel open, where you can feel like you can process, you can share, you can be yourself, right? You can come out of your shell. And I've got a thick shell. It takes a while for me to get out of it. And some contexts, I don't come out of it. And that's, that's on me and something that I'm processing. But just that safety, and that's part of the therapist space too, is safety. And so creative expression without a therapist, can have all of these components. Yeah, so those are a few things that come to mind. The other thing is just a lot of it relates to this too, self-compassion, just really knowing that you are who you are and who you need to be right now in this moment, that everything that has happened to you, and we've talked a bit about this, Eli, about our past experiences, but it makes us who we are, and it's a gift that we bring to ourselves and to others. And so just to affirm who we are, right, as our true self, right, and that inner critic, that focus on weaknesses is part of that process too. But it's something that we want to tame and bring to the service of the true self. So that's always been important. And then one other thing I'll say is that I used to look at the hero's journey as kind of weak. There's the 3-act structure, and it's kind of idealistic and all of that kind of stuff. And so I kind of liked the 2-act structure a lot. I liked the chaos, and I liked, I always kind of found it hard. I'll share some of my films in the chat as well, to break that. What is that 3rd act? What is there? Is it really possible to find catharsis, what you're talking about? And I know for a long time in the films I've made, there was a lot of 1st act and 2nd act, a lot of chaos, a lot of disorder. And I struggled to find that third act, which is the new story, right? What is the story? And this is what I work with my clients on, is what is the story that you want to tell, right? Your unique giftings and potentials and all of and that. So and that takes help. Yeah, help.
Is that where a lot of the healing comes from? And isn't that 3rd story, that 3rd act?
Say that again.
Is that where a lot of the healing kind of comes from, and the transformation comes from in your clients, is like when you bring them to that 3rd act, the 3rd chapter?
Yeah, the wisdom, right? Because we all have that wisdom in our experiences. That's the gold. That's, as my one of my teachers said, that's the juice. Look for that juice. Look for that place. Can you say more about that? it's about opening up the wisdom that's there, that it's difficult to mine sometimes. It's difficult to really get to, but I really think that the power is there for the next story.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because it sounds like that is a really, yeah, really beautiful thing to do, is when you see somebody's, their inner healer awakening, their wisdom awakening, you're kind of getting to just get to be witness to that. It's a
Oh,
very beautiful experience. And so
yeah.
with your clients, like what have been some kind of examples of how you've used films therapeutically with your clients?
Well, yeah, it's a lot of clients come with significant trauma, and I work with people who have cancer, and also people who have traumatic backgrounds from an indigenous perspective. And a lot of one of the first stages in trauma work is just resourcing, is just really finding, hey, who are you? You are powerful, and your voice is beautiful. And so just having a safe space to communicate that is really, really important. And so um, I work in an open studio kind of contacts drop-in center. And so there was this one young mother, and I have permission to share this story. I'm presenting at the Canadian Art Therapy Association conference as well in this month, and I share a bit more of it there. But she came in, and one of the powers of open studio is you have lots of people creating things, so people get to witness the creative process, because it isn't something that you can just necessarily jump into. And so she was witnessing over probably about 5 drop-in sessions of this other individual who was creating a digital story with some stock footage. So this is something for everyone. This is I guess I see with my clients that everyone can access filmmaking therapy is through and we use WeVideo and the media library that exists there, so people can. So she was watching this individual tell his story and got really inspired by that. And at the end of probably about our third time we were together, she said, I want to tell a story too. And so I had explained the hero's journey in previous sessions and explained this idea of how to do this, how to create a little script to point form. And she came back the next session with a list of images and her story. And so over the next 2 sessions, she created this beautiful story. It didn't have a narration, but when she showed it, she just began to spontaneously tell us about each image. She narrated the whole journey of all these images that made up her life. And what was really beautiful about this was that the first time I met her in sharing circles, she would easily become emotionally activated, telling some of her story. And so so through this process, she was able to access her story in a distanced way through symbols, and to the point where she was a powerful woman, and working through addictions, looking to get her child back. And I had talked a couple of weeks ago to one of the workers that I work with, and he said, she's doing well. She's got a stable home and a job, and yeah, so that's some of the power of filmmaking therapy for ordinary people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So powerful. It's so powerful. And especially what you said about like when you have those symbols in a way to distance yourself from your actual trauma and be able to have like a little bit of that distance, that can give you so much power and so much more wisdom too, can come flowing in through that. But being able to feel grounded and talking about your trauma through symbols is like, yeah, such a beautiful thing that film therapy offers. And yeah, it sounds amazing. And that's really cool too, that you're hearing that she's like had these transformations in her life. And healing is a long journey, it's an arduous journey, but she's within it, she's stepping within it, she's moving within that, and that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. We aren't our trauma. There's a part of us that's traumatized, but there's a part of us too that's really strong that can be an observer to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a part of us, just scars that can heal.
Yeah.
So lastly, I wanted to ask about your own personal experiences with filmmaking as therapy. I know when we first met, you were sharing with me films that were really, really beautiful. They were very like sacred and divine and awe-inspiring short films that you were sharing with me. And so I'm curious about how you've approached filmmaking as a form of healing right now, currently.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, so it's a part of my practice to just spontaneously create. I use the same process as my clients now. I've kind of taken a break from short and feature filmmaking, and so my mode is very much like my clients. It's going into video and finding some images that hold the feelings that I'm working through, or as I'm walking around, shooting some video and thinking consciously about some of the long shot, the medium shot, some of the close-ups, thinking about not just taking a still picture, but something that maybe that really connects with me and resonates with something inside that I can explore further later into like a little film, which might be like 2 minutes. That's sort of my mode, and yeah, so it's basically just keeping active and keeping that inner critic at bay to just continue my process.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Being able to kind of create those small videos and stuff and put it outside of you, being able to express it outwards. Like now the inner critic doesn't live inside your head. It's like now out there. You can like have fun
Exactly.
with it rather than it being this
Exactly. Yeah.
overpowering monster. It's like, this is what's up. Like, yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's powerful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, Bevan. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting.
Awesome. So Madeleine, I first saw your film Dancing Through a couple of days ago, and it was so powerful, it was so moving. I remember just feeling a lot of very strong spiritual feelings and sensations throughout the film. There's like a poetry to it, and poetry in moments that's very, very powerful. And also, what I loved about the film is it really speaks towards human resilience and just the beautiful spirit of resilience, which is so key to healing. That's so key to healing, is that undying, like unwavering, powerful, immense, awe-inspiring resilience that all of us humans have. And so I was curious about I want to learn more about what your process was like creating the film. And specifically, I guess initially, I'm curious about how Indigenous spiritual practices play into your healing and also played into the documentary and the structure of the documentary.
Thank you. Thank you for watching it. And so happy to hear that the message of who I am and the way that I practice in this world has reached you. And that's really important for me to know. I grew up in ceremony. My father is a ceremony holder. He carries ceremony. And I grew up in, sweat lodge and Sundance and all types of ceremonies like that. So that's always been a part of who I was. And I want to say that that is a privilege because our people, as Indigenous people, have had our ceremonies ripped away from us. And a lot of us are reclaiming it and trying to find it again, to find who we are. So for me to be able to have access to that at a young age and throughout my life is a privilege as an Indigenous person. So I just want to say that. And I wanted to portray that in there because that is what helps me through everything, like hence dancing too, right? Like dancing through is what it's called, because throughout everything that I've gone through in my entire life, dance has been the medicine, dance and movement. And it's not just like doing a dance move, right? It's that expression, that outlet. And in our ceremonies, we also have dance, we have movement, we have that full aspect of the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and the emotional, right? So for me, that physical is very strong for me. So I wanted to show what that physical does for me in that aspect of the whole medicine wheel. And the spiritual part was my dad. Like my dad is that elder, that like sacred elder, you know, when you see them, he just has that energy. And every time I go to see him, I bring friends over there. You know, everybody's like, I love your dad, you know, like, I just want to be around your dad. He always has all these amazing things to say, and his energy. And so it was important for me to have that in there, you know, to have my dad be that force, and to show people that this is what carries us through the traumas. You know, yes, our family still has healing, you know, from the residential school impacts and, you know, all of that. But look at, we still have this strength. And as Indigenous people and as humans, we shouldn't have to be resilient. Like, we shouldn't, right? Like, these things shouldn't happen to where we're like, oh, I can overcome that. Just watch this. But in reality, that's what happens. And we are, you know, I would love to live in a world where I don't ever have to say I'm resilient, you know, throw things at me. But it is, we are resilient. We are resilient as, you know, humankind, and as Indigenous people, we are very resilient. Like, we're still here, and we're here to tell our stories, and we're here to tell our stories in these very contemporary ways as well, mixing it with our ceremonies, right? Showing our ceremonies in a way where we're not bringing you into it in the film, but we're giving you the essence and the feeling of it. Like, this is what helps us. This is what's helping us through everything that's going on in the world right now.
How did you kind of make those choices to decide how you're going to create the essence of it, but not bring people into it, because it is so sacred, and it is like, it's private, it's sacred, it's not something that like everybody can attend and be in, but still sharing the essence of it. How did you kind of, as a filmmaker, make those choices?
Well, I am so new to the filmmaker realm, you know, this world, but I'm an artist, and it's all I've always loved to express. And my friend Anika Siskakis, who's the co-director and co-producer, has that experience, and she came in as an ally telling an Indigenous story. And she just asked me, you know, like, hey, what is it we're going to do? She shot the documentary stuff as I was going through the cancer journey, and she was just with me all the time. And I felt there was an element missing. There was something missing when we looked at all the footage. I said, I have to show me, I have to show my spirit. And I want people to see what I went through and how my brain thinks and sees every experience. So there's a scene in the beginning with the bathtub where I have the robe that you wear when you go to the doctor, you know, the little blue thing that you wear. And I was underwater, and all the voices were coming at me of the doctors, and it felt like I was drowning. That's exactly what it felt like when I was at the doctors. I was like, I can't understand them anymore, because there's like 7 different doctors, right? Like, I don't know, I'm drowning in everything that they're saying. And I wanted everyone outside to feel that, to see that, you know, not to hurt them, but for them to understand, like, it's not just, hey, you had cancer, you had a mastectomy surgery. Well, no, great, you're okay, awesome, right? No, there was like a whole emotional thing, that roller coaster that happened through, you know, through the whole experience. And I was like, I need to portray that, because that's who I am. And that's what I feel. And I want to take people on that journey with me. And even with my dancing, I was like, I want them to dance and see what dance does for me. I want them to feel that element of like that uplifting and that spirit. And every time I jig and I smile, you know, and I have the powwow dancing and the shawl, I want them to feel the energy and the medicine of that, because this is what I do. This is why I'm here, to share this medicine. And I want people to feel that. And along comes the music, right? Along comes the elements of the Northern Lights, the elders. So it was just a natural idea, you know, that came to me. And I was like, this can't happen without that part of me in here, because you'll get to know who I am 100% by these scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so powerful, because it's not only are they getting to know your story and like your resiliency, but they're also getting to know your spirit, your soul. And so that's super, super, super powerful.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful that, like, yeah, you're able to kind of create that.
It was really important for me. It was really important for me to do that, because I also have a story, as many, you know, Bevan, you were talking about these Indigenous, you know, young people that you're working with, that we have these stories of trauma, you know, and sadly, I have that same story. For me to show, sorry, I get so emotional, young people, in my community that have come from that and that are going through that you can do this. You can make a film. You can create this essence and show people. That's what it's about for me, is really like, even when I see the ending of my film, I'm like, 12-year-old Maddie, you friggin' did it. You did something so cool. You were homeless. You lived on the streets, like all the things that happened to the foster care system, almost getting killed in an abusive relationship, cancer, everything that you went through, the abandonment, neglect. 12-year-old Maddie, you friggin' did it. And you are doing it. Look at how cool this is. You never thought you would do this. And this is why I want to do this. Because all the young people that are in my community right now, they're like, Maddie did it. Maddie's doing it. How cool, I can do it too.
That's amazing. And that is like such an incredibly healing gift to give to others, to have them feel inspired that like their stories aren't like, this isn't just like a trauma and you're broken and stuff. Like you can actually like take that story and turn it into something really beautiful that like can emotionally impact people, and you get to own that. Like, you get to have so much power over that story when you make it into a film or a dance piece or a theater piece. And yeah, that's amazing that now like young people are going to be able to watch this film and not only feel like they're going to have a very healing experience just from seeing like the resilience and the positivity and the hope and all that, but also like knowing that you made it too. It's just like, wow, that's awesome. It's like, yeah, it's so powerful. Was there a moment in the film making process that was, you'd say was probably the most healing moment for you?
I think when I was going through it in filming, I had no time to process what I was going through. She was literally, Anika was following me to the surgeries, every surgery. How are you feeling after? How are you feeling? She had her camera in her bag and she was taking it out and it was like, hey, tell me how you're feeling, putting it back in her bag at the hospital. I didn't really have time to process during to say like, oh, this is what I'm feeling like. I'm like, let's just go. Whatever happens, like whatever the outcome is, let's just keep going, because this is happening for a reason. It wasn't until after, when I watched it, that I was really seeing it. And I was like, wow, like this actually is medicine. This actually is healing. This is actually a healing modality, right? Like this is something so huge that I've done that I didn't even realize I was doing for myself. So until I got to do that editing part, and the editor, her name is Shayana Kutineu, and she was editing and I gave her some ideas. And then she was like, wait, no, we have to show people who you are to the community, and then tell your story. And I had no idea I should have done that. And so she had that idea. And when she did that, it really uplifted me and was like, okay, this is who I am and this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to keep doing it. So it wasn't until I got to watch it. And still, even when I watch it, different parts of it affect me, right? Different parts of it. I'm like, oh, okay, look at, there's a shift there. There's a shift there. But it's honestly, it's that end dancing scene. It's that end dancing scene with that beautiful woman, her sound and her voice. And I'm like, okay, I can let this go. This is for the people. This is for them now. I got what I needed from it, and I will every time, but this is for the people. This is for them, and I'm going to keep going.
And that is a powerful moment of healing too, when you realize that you've done all of the work and now it's just for other people. It's like no longer necessarily something you need to go back into and work through and all that stuff, but like just that now it's for others, now it's for others healing. And in that there's like a really powerful release. It's taking those trauma demons, it's taking all of that, just opening it up and just letting it all fly out. Just amazing. Yeah,
exactly. And I just want to say, like, if there's young people, whatever age you are, you want to do something, like I'm going to be 39 here in a month, and I just finally am getting into film. Like I've danced and done theater and everything else, and I've just done 2 films, and I'm like, just do it. Like if it's pulling you and you think about it every day, do it. Like Nike says, just do it. Like really go for it. Like, because you never know, you're being called, you have a calling, And that's one of the things my dad and elders have told me in ceremonies. We forgot how to listen. And what that means is if you have a thought or you have something coming to you all the time and you're ignoring it, you're not listening. You know, if you're out in the trees and you're grounding yourself and you get a message and you're like, oh, I had this weird thought when I was walking. No, actually, that's a message. Listen to it and act on it, because you have no idea where it's going to take you. I had no idea I'd be in Portland Film Festival on this panel, you know, like the coolest thing that's happened in my life, right? Like, it's like, it might be small to some people, but for a little northern girl from northern Saskatchewan, this is freaking huge. This is massive. This is the coolest thing. And I get to tell young people and older people, right? But listen, really listen to that. If I can leave that message with whoever needs to hear it.
It's an amazing message to leave. Yeah, I think that's a very, very, very important message for us to leave, and for anyone who watches it, just to think about that, is to listen. And okay, just to add on that, and then we're going to jump on to the next person. To listen to that, is there any advice or insight you'd have for people for how to listen, for what they should be doing? Like, is it meditation? Is it an intuitive thing? What do you think for people who are listening, who are like, oh, I want to do that, I want to listen? Do you have any insight or advice about how to do that?
I think the thing is just to be in the present, because we're always looking outside of ourselves. We're always looking to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you know, we're looking outside of ourselves for the answers. The answers are all inside of us. And another thing that the elders and my dad taught me is that the greatest journey and the most important we're going to ever do is to travel from here to here. And when we do that, that's where we find all the answers. We don't have to go to Bali. We don't have to eat, pray, love. We don't have to go, you know, to those places and pay big bucks. You can if you want to, because you're just going to find you're going to have to be present there too. You can be present exactly where you are right now. And like Bevan said, you know, as you are right now is enough. As you are right now is enough. Because in 5 days, you're enough in 5 days, just as you are in 5 days.
Awesome. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much. And this is, thank you so much for sharing that too. It's really, I think, really meaningful for so many people, because I think that's one of the things that if, you know, more people start listening to their souls, there'll be an abundant amount of self-love and beautiful art, really, really, really beautiful art pouring from so many people. So thank you.
Congratulations.
So much. So next, Jared. Jared, your film Clean Slate, I watched it very early on in the film festival, and it was so powerful. I didn't know you were from Atlanta. I'm living in Atlanta. So that was the first thing that really was like, oh my God, that's a synchronicity. Like, it's so cool. But beyond that, just being able to see Josh and Cassidy move through trauma and just like moving through addiction and moving through healing, and getting to see all of the moments of it being really painful and the moments of it being hopeful and the moments of like pure blissful joy, and then the moments of like intense stress, and how I feel like a lot of filmmakers who watch this movie will be able to very much resonate with many of the scenes, because there are those moments where, you know, everything goes wrong and it's like extremely stressful. How do you cope with it? How do you kind of move forward with it? And I thought your film did such a beautiful way of showing these beautiful souls' journeys through healing. So I was curious, what are some of the insights and wisdom you gained from this experience of working so closely with people in this kind of, I'd say, a therapeutic way? Because a lot of what you're dealing with was very, very intimately tied to mental health and very intimately tied to their healing. So I'm curious, what were some insights and wisdoms you learned as a documentary filmmaker with this journey?
Oh man, thanks so much for asking. The vibe of this panel is already fantastic. I appreciate Madeline and Bevan, and I look forward. I'm taking notes on what people say, so I'm already excited for the rest of it. The film that I made that is in the Portland Film Festival, and I'm so excited for you to get to see it. And the website is in the chat now. Is called Clean Slate, and it follows two men that are in drug rehab facility. They live there. It's residential. It's required for some to avoid prison time. And over the course of their time, they realized as a part of the experience, the therapy for them would be to make a film. So they make a short film, they write a script. As we all know, it's very difficult to do the work of making a movie. And I realized as I was there helping them write screenplays and make movies, that'd be quite an experience if that we could, as an audience viewer, watch a feature documentary, watching them trying to work towards health, to stay sober, to work on their mental health, but then to also make a short film up as a part of that process. So there's kind of two answers. You asked a good question about working with subjects. I think the first thing that I do when I think about what films are is I think about who we are as filmmakers. And so I come from a more traditional film background and production studying, and worked another job for 10 years where I was helping young adults, kids, to find mental health and stability, and then transitioned into filmmaking full time. So I think who I am, and maybe this is the first answer for everybody who's listening, is like who you are and who you bring to the film set is wildly important. And so for many traditional filmmaking experiences, film itself is not therapy. I really appreciate what Bevan said, and I'm so excited. I feel like everyone would benefit with whatever the journeys have been to do some therapy, because in doing that, where you're sitting with a trained professional and sharing things from your life, a lot of which need someone to be able to compassionately hear and then offer, not even advice is the right way, but offer guidance. And much like how Madeline already shared about her, the elders and her dad, like people speaking into your life that can guide you towards the way. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, doing the work really helped me who I was on set, because our egos involved. Like, you are still a human that likes to be seen and known and wants to be seen and known, and you just happen to be holding a camera. And when you're in a situation where people that you're filming are dealing with heavy stuff, felonies and mental health, and people die often in that program, it's not a place for me to be working out my own stuff. It's not a place for me to be hoping that they validate me as a filmmaker, right? And so being able to do the work before I get to set allows me to be open to change. For me, film experiences are exercises in empathy and transformation. I love that that's a part of the title of this program, is because I do film because it changes me. Making films changes me, and I think making films is an opportunity for change for my subjects. And then our job then is to bring that environment with us to any place where we're filming or doing life. And then it influences the way that you make movies and you direct and you write and that you produce and that you edit, is because I'm trying to create a safe environment. I would love that being on camera in front of the camera with me is a place where someone, a subject, might feel safe enough to open up their true self, their darkest self, the things that they're unsure of. And then in the end, if you watch a film, you're gonna realize that you're in a vulnerable experience, that you're in a transformational experience, that you feel like you're hopefully at the end of my film, a fly on the wall at a place that you might never get to be physically. But over this 90 minutes, you're going to really go on a journey with someone and see them deal with their hardest stuff. And I was on a panel once, on a documentary panel, and another filmmaker said this. His name's Theo Anthony, and he makes wonderful movies. But he said, my job as a documentarian is to hold up a mirror to people to show them their own proudest self. And immediately when he said that, I thought, no, that's not our job. Our job is to be the objective truth or something. And he said, well, no, because I don't want to put my stamp on who they say they are, especially in documentaries. I want to hold up a mirror through our film so that they could see the film, and it removes some of what I would say about them, but it allows them to put their most true self out into the world. And whether that's something you disagree with, or it angers you, or it's something that inspires you, or it's something that you learn from, that in doing that, we get the complexities that is the realness of human story, instead of a whitewashed version of something, pun intended, where you kind of make it into a palatable experience that then you can understand because I understood or I learned. And I think that our ability to make myself as a filmmaker less and less and less means that the film has the ability to be truly transformational for the audience, but also then for the subjects that I spend time with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful. What are some of the day-to-day things you'll do to make your subjects feel like it's a safe set? Like, what are some of the kind of day-to-day specific things you're going to do that will help them feel safe? Because I really love that you said that, because I do think that one of the most healing and beautiful things in documentary filmmaking is watching someone's authentic self. there's a lot of times in documentary, you can see people's walls come up and a lot of people's defenses. And that's okay, but we got to watch that all the time because we're always watching people's egos in any place, in a restaurant, anywhere, you're gonna watch someone's ego. But when you get to see somebody's like authentic self, like their true self, their soul kind of like come out and shine, that's something that it's vulnerable and we don't get to witness that much unless we have a lot of loving friends or partners or family that will do that with us. We don't get to often experience that. So it's really, really beautiful to get to experience that. So I'm curious, what are the specific things you kind of will do to help create like a safe space where we get to see those authentic selves come flying out and let vulnerability come out?
Yeah, I feel like part of it is, if you're a director or a filmmaker, I think you need to realize that you're always directing, that it doesn't start when you pick up the camera, that it started for me there months before, when you're doing research, when you're in relationship with people, when you have lunch with people. I think that eating meals is important with your subjects, and to just be a human. And you set a tone. I set a tone with my sensibilities, with my personality, with the way that I listen. I love that Madeline said that quote from her dad, that we forgot how to listen. And I think that showing who you are and that you're there for them, and that for, especially for this film, is really important. And it might be different if you're making a different film or you're doing an investigation, right? It's very different. You're not bonding with them to say, I'm with you, if you're exposing something that they're a part of that is bad, or a system that needs to change, right? But I still think that in every film, there's a relationship that you're saying, there's an agreement that I'm going to tell the truth, that I'm going to listen, that I'm going to ask questions, that I'm there for this story. And for this story, I think we made a decision early on, when you're dealing with a tough subject, that we decided early on that we weren't going to show drug use on camera. It's very much being done, and it's very much there, and very much in these guys' lives, off and on in recovery. And we realized, like, that's not the film we want to make. We are here to tell a story that adds empathy and gives someone like my mom, right, salt of the earth, mid-60s woman, has a perm. But if you ask someone like that what they think, if they think of the word addict, or someone who struggles with addiction, or someone who has a felony, she's going to fill in for you a very specific demographic, probably skin color, probably socioeconomic, probably like things that just aren't true. And I wanted to make a movie where by the end of it, middle of it, end of it, you realize that you have grown to really love these people, and they also struggle with addiction, and they also have felonies. And maybe it makes you redefine what you think of someone. And by the end, you'd hire these guys. You'd be like, oh, I'd go to work with them. I'd hire them. I'd do life with them. And that's a change. That's a real change over the course of 90 minutes for someone, on what they thought someone was to what they discovered these guys to be. So tricks and tips is, I think you got to be genuine. I think you got to be vulnerable. I think you got to be consistent. For me, it's show up on time, show up when you say you're going to show up. And then make what you said you were going to make. Like you're in contracts with people. I hope you should be, when you make films with people that aren't you. And you have to follow through on that. You have to be honest and genuine and make something that they can show and be proud of. That's not for me. I don't make gotcha films. I make things that hopefully add to empathy and care and kindness and patience in the world. So
yeah, and that's amazing, especially what you're saying about just the power of that empathy, the power of like seeing somebody having all of these judgments about somebody in the beginning, and then being able to watch a film to have, and then by the end of it, you actually have empathy for that person now, is a huge gift right now, especially because I think if our world has more empathy, if we had more empathy for each other, a lot of the traumas that we're going through, a lot of the collective darkness and trauma that we're all moving through right now, we'd be able to ascend from it if there was just a lot of empathy for our fellow humans. And so it's really, really beautiful that in your film and in other films, there's that ability to create empathy when you are able to, like within Clean Slate, look at all the human moments and really like have you align with them in values, align with them in moments where they're feeling joyful. Like it's very, very powerful. What were some of the experience of Josh and Cassidy? What was their healing like after the film? Like witnessing this documentary, sharing the documentary, like what's been their healing like post documentary?
Yeah, well, it's hard to avoid spoilers, so you have to see the film. But using film and making art as a part of therapy, along with traditional therapy, was already a part of their journey. So it was nice that that's something that I was witnessing happen and then participating in. And then the film ended up amplifying that, right? Like the pressure was on when there's 4 or 5 other camera people filming you do your thing that you thought otherwise would be a very private and vulnerable thing. So I think the process of making this film only made it more real and made them hear themselves talk and know that even if their short film failed or it wasn't what they hoped it would be, that it would help people, right? That people would watch this and be encouraged. And I think that alone, as the process of test screening and then now screening the film, they've been in the room with people who don't know them, who watch it, who then know them or a version of them, and then have an opinion or a change or a transformation. And I think that seeing that has really, really helped them. So both of them have had ups and downs. Cassidy, ups and downs. He came here to live with us. It's kind of like a side tangent you've asked me about, is I live at and help run a art farm in Oakland, California, near San Francisco. And it's a 95-acre farm that has orchards and a garden and animals, but we also host artists. So people come and live for a year as the main core, and then guests come and stay for 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, and do work alongside each other. So we have everybody is here. People are, all for therapy and growth and pushing themselves, and they're writing songs and making paintings and writing books, and all the offices they're all around me right now. And making art amongst people is incredibly transformative. Like that, being able to show your rough cuts to people or your rough work or your work in progress on Friday nights and chat it up with people is insane and incredible. And that made me and the film better. But then that also happened for Josh and Cassidy. They had this process where they were reading a script to all the men that were in recovery and taking their advice and opinions and changing the characters to make them even more real. And then having guys on set that had their own stories and traumas and things that they were bringing to set, and it just made it more real. So Cassidy, ups and downs. Josh, ups and downs, but it's ended really up. He is married. He got two dogs and a car and a house, and is trying to start a wedding video business. So video and art as a part of therapy will always be a part of these guys' lives. Cassidy will always be writing scripts and writing songs and writing poems. And I think that's so beautiful that they found a place that works for them, and that the documentary could partner with them in that for this season of life, and show that to the world. I hope more people make art, because these guys made art or tried to make art, and it also looks terrible. It looks so hard to do. So cheers to all of you who make movies, because any movie, even if it's a bad movie, is a miracle. Like you did it. So I like Madeline's spirit. I like celebrating that you could do it, and I like having a part of yourself be proud that you did it. And I think you should make another. Like, don't give up.
Yeah, definitely. And that's so powerful that, like, with this community, like intentional living space, the transformation of like seeing people make art together. Like, have there been kind of moments that you've seen kind of as like just an outsider kind of watching people kind of connect? Have there been kind of some specific moments that have just been really like kind of heartwarming for you, of just seeing like relationships or connections kind of happening that seem like divine intervention, seem kind of like they're like meant to happen?
Yeah, especially because I feel like, and I think I've said this to you, Eli Matilda, is like, as humans, we're just so drawn to comfort, right? There's a reason that we all like good food, Netflix, a warm bath, and a nap, right? Like that's comfortable, that's good. And I think that we don't always live like that way. Most of the time, growth comes through struggle and heartache and heartbreak and like never giving up and working really hard. And so I think that when we make art out of those spaces, but can bring them into a safe environment where, you know, the people are in the arena with you. It's a Brene Brown phrase of like, it's not people who are in the stands watching, rooting you on or cheering or jeering at you, right? That it's people who are also making things, who know the struggle and can celebrate with you the miniature wins. Then there have been insane moments of catharsis and growth and togetherness and creativity, because now other things are creatively born. That's probably the thing I've watched, is like someone shares this, but it causes this, and then they partner on this, and then this causes this, and all these things exist that would otherwise never exist except for this environment. So I've watched people toil by themselves in a dark room and edit for months and months and months, and then get to show to this group and to have the group receive it and affirm them, and then at the same time be able to say, but what about this? Why this? What if you did this? And that ends up making your art better. I think that's the big gap between being a hobbyist, like someone who just makes art because it's fun and good, which is fine, be a hobbyist. But to move over to where you try and do this professionally, that's something I learned, was you need to find trusted people who will beat you up, who love you, who support you, encourage you, but they will rip you to shreds. And I had a good filmmaker friend one time watch a movie that I made, a feature film, and I spent 4 years on it. He watched it and he said, that was good, and then they ripped it apart for 2.5 hours. And that made the film what it should be. It made the film way better, because if they said, that was good, let's go to dinner, that didn't serve you as an artist at all. So our environment here at Heirloom East Bay, and there's a website, I should put that in there, is a great place, and people come and you can find both the community, the encouragement, and people who will tell you the truth and make it better through their honesty.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. And that's also kind of why I think that you need to have probably a therapist outside of doing film work and all that, because another part of, especially if it's professional work, is being a professional artist, because that's something that, like, if you're in a vulnerable space and you're really wanting it to be like therapy for you, the sensitivity to the subject matter and to the story is like becomes a little bit too much. And so, like, that's why having like a therapist throughout the process, if you're trying to make a professional art piece as therapy, that's why it's key. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Danielle Baldwin. So I watched your film just yesterday, and it was so powerful. It was really, what I really cherished about it was just seeing the intimate relationship that you developed with this family who had lost their child, and just a lot of moments in this film where you're just kind of doing things, honestly, I've seen similarly done in drama therapy. For example, like the empty chair exercise, and asking someone, what would you say to this person if they were right here? And just getting to be in their home and, being in his garden, asking about the garden. There's a lot of moments in this film that were just really beautiful, intimate, like moments of healing. And then also we're getting to see, again, the spirit of resiliency, the spirit of human resiliency, especially in terms of like just you physically training and then going to run with the bulls and stuff, and the power of that. And so I was curious, what were some of the most healing moments you had in creating this documentary? I know it was a long journey, and what were some of the most healing moments you had?
Well, first let me say that PJ, the film is my promise to PJ, and I'm sober for a long time, and as part of my my therapy and the 12th step that I subscribe to, having had a spiritual awakening, we reach out to the addict or alcoholic that still suffers. This is part of my program. So one of the great things that I want to clarify is, yes, it's wonderful that you fulfill your promises in life, and what length you would go to do that. And the promise was, I had put this boy into recovery 4 times over a 10-year period. The last one, I had him write a bucket list of the 10 things he always wanted to do if he went to prison or he OD'd. And the only match that we had on my bucket list when I got sober in 2006 was to run with the bulls in Pamplona, Spain. So I think the key misunderstanding about the film is, oh man, that's great, Daniel, for you to have kept your word. And he died, I took his ashes and went to Spain, because I struggled so greatly with it, because I was going to be damned if a 10-year journey with this boy was going to end in his overdosing and dying after having 3 years sober, and I never got a chance to take him. So the point of the film, more than, and a lot of people, like I said, have reached out and said, man, that's so great. That wasn't the point of it. Although I, like I said, I think it's important for you to fulfill your promises. The point was to give a voice to those people that are left behind. What's it like, even if it's not drug addiction, what's it like for a mother to answer the door at 2 o'clock in the morning with the cops standing there, and there's been a terrible vehicular accident and they've lost their 21-year-old kid? What happens to them after?